Welcome back to Rewind of the Living Dead. I am Damon Martin.
And I'm Patrick Guerra.
And Patrick, this week we are diving into the world of mythology with the new film, Death of a Unicorn.
Death of a Unicorn, starring Will Poulter as Shepard, Téa Leoni as Belinda, Richard E. Grant as Odell, Anthony Carrigan as Griff, Paul Rudd as Elliot, and Jenna Ortega as Ridley. Released, of course, in March of 2025. Written and directed by Alex Sharfman. Damon, Death of a Unicorn, finally here. Another highly anticipated A24 movie. It's funny, you played the trailer there, and I didn't realize just how much of the movie is in the trailer, which shouldn't come as a shock, because now this is now officially a trailer hating stan account, right? Like we just don't, now trailers are like, persona non grata in this household. But when I think about the simple idea of what Death of a Unicorn is, it's all over the trailer, and that is the movie you get.
Yeah, they're not really hiding anything with this one, which, I mean, again, to a certain extent, I understand. I think horror comedies, you kind of get away with that a little bit more because they're meant to be a little goofier. They're not really, they're not necessarily dense with plot anyways. So if you know a little bit more, I just, right before we did the podcast while I was eating dinner, The Hangover was on HBO, and I love The Hangover. It's one of the great comedies. And when you watch the trailer for The Hangover, they pretty much tell you the plot of the movie. The guys are going on a bachelor, they're doing a bachelor's night, right before one of them gets married. They all get hammered or drunk or drugged, and they wake up the next morning and they don't remember what happened, and they try to figure out and put the pieces together what kind of crazy shit they did the night before. It's not the most difficult concept, but when you watch the movie, it's hilarious. So to a certain extent, when it comes to my current disdain for trailers, Death of a Unicorn doesn't bother me quite as much, only because it's not the most serious movie. It's a horror comedy. It's meant to be goofy. It's meant to be funny. So again, I'm not saying I like it because you've kind of turned me into a trailer hater as well. But this one it doesn't bother me because this isn't like a dense plot heavy movie where, I feel like, man, you ruined it for me. No, you kind of just told me what I was getting into.
Right. It's like there's going to be a unicorn that gets hit by Paul Rudd, and what will ensue from there. And indeed, what they're hoping for is hilarity ensuing. Now, if it ensued or not, we're going to get into that probably more in spoilers. But if you are living under a rock and you're outside the horror community and you listen to us because you're some sort of masochist who loves the pain, Death of the Unicorn is about a father and daughter duo who are going to reunite with this CEO and I guess potentially be a bigger part of his company. And on the way to his very private chateau deep in some forest somewhere, they run into a unicorn. And indeed, hilarity ensues, Damon, not always on purpose. I get what you're saying about the trailer thing. That makes a lot of sense, actually. It's like, it is a horror comedy. Like, I just need to know what I'm in for so I can jump on the ride and see where the comedy takes me. But you still need a little bit of subversion. I think subversion is what really changes the game. When I think of like a great horror comedy, I think of The Boys from County Hell. Like, it comes up so much now when I think about horror comedies, where it's like, I didn't see what was coming in that movie, like around every corner. And we've talked so much, and I cannot believe we have not done a podcast yet on Shaun of the Dead. Shaun of the Dead is another one where it's like, it's a zombie comedy. You know what you're getting into, and but believe me, it does not divert from the formula at all. But the subversion of expectations along the way keep it enjoyable. You're not like, oh, here's what happens next. It's how it happens next, or how it tricked you into thinking that was going to happen next, and instead this happens next. I don't know if Death of a Unicorn does that. And it's really interesting. Like, Alex Sharfman is a guy I'm like, I've never heard of this guy. Like, and then I look at what he's produced. He's produced some very good movies. He produced The Witch, which I know you and I both love. And he produced Resurrection, which was an incredible psychological thriller that came out of nowhere. If you still haven't seen Resurrection, go ahead and change that. Alex Sharfman had a hand in that, and please hang your hat on that one, Alex Sharfman, because that's a fantastic movie with Tim Roth and Rebecca Hall. Really good movie. Like these and The Witch, which is a very, very, very good movie, but he wanted to try his hand at directing something. So I believe this is his feature film debut, or it's his second feature, something like that.
But if you see the actually, if you stuck to the credits, you see one of the main producers is Ari Aster, so he's kind of paying him back for
Yeah.
the Witch. He actually is one of the producers on this film. Yeah, I've not heard of him before now, to be honest with you. And to your point about like horror comedies, I mean, I agree and I disagree. I agree, like when you talk about Shaun of the Dead, but one of my all time, if not my all time favorite horror comedy is Zombieland, and it's not the most intricate plot in the world. It's a pretty straightforward movie, and I still love it. You know what I mean? I didn't need it. I knew what I was getting into, and I think here's my opinion when it comes to horror comedies. And I did a written review that you can read over on rewindedlivingdead.com on the new movie Borderline, which stars Samara Weaving, who I adore. And I don't want I mentioned this in another podcast, but I'll mention it here again. That movie was pitched as a horror comedy or as a thriller comedy. The problem was it wasn't particularly funny, and I think if they would have just made a straight up thriller, it actually would have been pretty good because it was teetering right on that edge of actually like being a pretty creepy, like disturbing thriller about like a fan obsessed with a pop star and like convinced he should be with her. Now we all know there are real stories of that out in the world, and it felt to me like if they would have leaned into that, it would have been a better movie. But the comedy just didn't work in that movie. It wasn't really funny. Like none of it made me laugh. It was just kind of like the stuff that was supposed to make me laugh was just kind of dumb. And again, I understand everyone's got their own sense of humor, so I'm not saying that like I'm exclusively what you're gonna do with your audience to make laugh. But again, like with a horror comedy, I don't know. Maybe I just go with lower expectations. And again, I guess when you're pitching me as a horror comedy, I need horror, obviously. We get that with Shaun of the Dead, Zombieland, movies like that. But when you pitch me as a horror comedy, you gotta make me laugh. And I will say there were a couple of moments in Death of a Unicorn that did make me laugh. But
Oh yeah.
it was also kind of like, I don't know how to explain. Like there's a lot of stuff that was played for laughs that didn't make me laugh either. So this was a harder movie to grade because it is definitely a horror comedy, 100%. There's no doubt about that. There's a lot of stuff packed in here to try and make you laugh. The problem is, I would say only about 25 to maybe 30% of the jokes really landed with me. And so, again, maybe it's just personal taste, and somebody else will see this movie and say, I laughed my ass off from beginning to end. But for me personally, there was one really, really funny a person in the movie, and that's Will Poulter's character. That's not a spoiler. He's just one of the characters in the movie. He has some of the best lines in the movie, things like that. But a lot of the other comedy just didn't really land for me. And when you talk about the trailer, like kind of like the subversion of expectations, I kind of got what I thought I was going to get out of this movie. It just didn't deliver in the way I hoped it would.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, and that's part of the reason why I avoid trailers altogether, because it's just like if I have any sort of expectation for your movie and you just meet it instead of exceed it or subvert it, then I'm going to be left kind of ho hum, right? And so I think I saw a teaser for this. I'll usually watch the teaser, and so but I got a lot of the movie from the teaser. Even I didn't even watch the full trailer, the one you played. We never talk about this. Like even in private, I don't think we talk about this often because you and I talk about comedy, but we usually talk about the classics. I think anytime you and I talk about comedy, we talk about the tried and true shit that dates all the way back to the 1980s or even 70s, and then all the way up to like the Will Ferrell comedies and stuff like that. Like we talk about all that, but like, what are you into right now, comedy wise? Because I have a theory with Death of a Unicorn. And that is like, I personally, at least for the last 10 to 15 years, where truth be told, comedies have waned very much, like especially in movies. I think in TV it's doing great. In TV there's a wonderful hybrid going on, but we don't talk about a lot of TV. In movies, it's tough to sell comedy anymore. In my opinion, Damon, my comedy now needs to be fucking weird. It needs to be odd and strange and almost, I don't want to say like surrealistic, but it's, I mean, listen, this is called Death of a Unicorn, and we know a unicorn is in this movie. This movie's already surreal. This movie's already in the fantasy world. So why not go a little fucking weirder? That's my opinion. Does Damon Martin consume weird comedy? Are you a Tim and Eric guy? Do you watch I Think You Should Leave? Do you consume any of that stuff that is super fucking far left?
So it's weird to say this, but like I love good comedy, but I don't consume a lot of comedy, if that makes sense. The
Yeah.
stuff that makes me here's the best thing I can say. The shows or the movies that make me laugh the most are the ones that have comedy blended in. Like one of my favorite all-time TV shows, I just rewatched a big part of it because my girlfriend had never seen it. She just rewatched it, is Succession. Now that's a drama. It's not straightly, it's not strictly
I think
but
that's mostly a comedy. Yeah.
but that show absolutely cracks me. Now there's some very heavy moments in that show. That's why I say like it's
Yes.
not just a straight up comedy. It's not The Big Bang Theory that's just meant to make you laugh. It's not a
Right.
sitcom. Succession cracks me up. Sopranos is my all-time favorite TV show. That show absolutely cracks me the hell up. You watch the Pine Barrens episode when Paulie and Christopher get lost in the woods, and you don't think that's one of the funniest episodes of TV you've ever seen. There's something wrong with you. So that's kind of and then when it comes to like movies, I was actually thinking about this maybe like a month or two ago, and I was like, when was the last time I saw a really, truly funny comedy? Just a straight up comedy. And I was like, I think it's been like a decade, and I think the last one I saw that really truly made me laugh was a movie called Game Night, the one with Jason Bateman, and Natalie. What's her? I can't remember her name. But yeah, like it's just a straight up comedy. It's Jeffrey Wright's in it. It's got it's got a really good cast. That movie literally cracked me up. That movie to this day cracks me up. But I was trying to think, I was like, man, I haven't seen like just this good straight up comedy, but movies that have comedy interlaced or TV shows that have comedy interlaced is kind of my speed. Outside of that, if you want to make me laugh, put on Bill Burr. I can watch Bill Burr all day. Bill Burr
So
cracks me the fuck
stand up.
up.
Yeah.
So stand up, I do enjoy stand up. I do enjoy that. But yeah, it's hard because I love comedies. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, if you put on National Lampoon's Vacation, you put on, classic, like movies like that. Of course, I love those comedies. But comedy's harder to get by today. So that's when I think of what makes me laugh. It's things that are laced with comedy that aren't just built as straight up comedies.
Okay, so the answer is you don't watch weird comedy. Like you don't
I
watch I
don't.
Think You Should Leave.
No, I had never seen it. Never
Holy
had interest in it.
shit. Give it a try after this podcast tonight. It's on Netflix. It's just if people don't know, it's actually a sketch comedy show. And I know that's totally different. I know we're talking about movies here, but he's about to come out with a movie, and you might have seen the trailer called Friendship or whatever with Paul
With
Rudd.
Paul Rudd, yeah, the trailer played
Yeah,
before this movie, yeah.
yeah, the weird guy in that movie, that's the star of I Think You Should Leave. So I'm very attracted to the idea of going to see that movie because his comedy is not normal. There's something wrong with his comedy, Damon. Someone was eating paint chips as a kid. If you know that line, you know what I mean. Like the man does strange comedy, like very strange comedy. He's actually big friends with Sam Richardson too, who did the Detroiters with him. But they do oddball comedy, really strange stuff. I'm a big Tim and Eric guy. Tim and Eric, like they made a movie called $1 Billion Movie. It's like a fever dream. It's like if you snorted unicorn dust slash LSD slash cocaine all in one fell swoop. Like you're like, how's this even a movie? Like it's so strange. And I just bring that up because I think to myself, like for a movie like this, if we're gonna go weird, let's get weird. Like let's not just try. Like it almost felt like a little bit of like we got to be normal for the people who are showing up for the unicorns. And it's like, but there are also weirdos showing up for the unicorns, like me. There's like real fucked up people with weird brains that don't work right who are showing up for your movie too. I'd like to see some of that comedy. So I think that's another way to subvert expectations is to do things that are so strange on screen that you have trouble processing them in the best ways possible. You go, I don't know why that happened right now, but that's fucking weird and I like it. It turns me on. Like that's how Patrick rolls.
Yeah, and listen, am I right in thinking? I know this is such a weird diversion. The Tim and Eric guy Is he the one? Is he the one in the famous meme on, or the famous clip on TikTok where it's like they play the Starship Troopers like, I did my part, I did my part, and he goes, I didn't do fucking shit. Is
Oh,
that's it, right?
that's the think you should leave guy. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's what I make sure I'm thinking about the right guy. That's him.
Yes.
Yes, that makes me laugh. Yeah,
Yeah, that's that guy a lot of the
yeah,
time. He's fucking
that
hilarious.
part always when I see that on TikTok always makes me laugh. Yeah, like I'm not opposed to weird comedy. Again, it just has to hit. And like I said, I love laughing. Don't get me wrong. I love a good comedy, and like, I love stand up comedy. I was fortunate enough in my life, I actually saw George Carlin in stand up before he passed away. Like one of my proudest achievements in life
It's incredible.
was I got to see George Carlin do live stand up. But yeah, it just has to hit. And Death of a Unicorn, it does teeter on that. Here's the thing I would say about the comedy in Death of a Unicorn. It teeters on weird, but it doesn't fall over the ledge. And I think what you want is it to fall over the ledge and just like
Yes.
embrace it. And it never quite embraces it. There's a lot of intentional comedy in this movie. What I mean by intentional comedy is like they're trying to make you laugh. Like they know.
Yeah, they're
like,
setting up a joke and they're trying to pay it off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
very much so.
yeah, like I almost feel like going back to Succession. Like I feel like a lot of Succession when they write the dialogue in that show, they're not writing it necessarily just to make you crack up, but it does crack you up. You know what I mean? Like I don't feel like they're sitting around the writers' room. You're like, will this make them laugh? Will this make them laugh? I don't know. They just write it and it just works. In Death of a Unicorn, the comedy feels a little over the top intentional. Like they know when Will Poulter is saying a line, they're trying to make you laugh.
Yeah.
And some of the ridiculous things that happen with the mythical creatures of the unicorns, they're doing it intentionally to make you laugh. Like they are sitting around the writer's room, or I know it's one guy, Alex Sharpman, but like he's sitting around and be like, is this going to make people laugh? Cool. I'll put that in there. So I kind of enjoy unintentional comedy when it's like delivered, but it just works. And this movie feels a little slapsticky, if that makes sense. Like it feels
A little bit.
yeah, a little bit like that. And a lot of the comedy, like there's not a ton of physical comedy. There's some physical comedy in here, but a lot of it is just line delivery. You know, they're just saying things to make you laugh. And again,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it can't work, but a lot of it doesn't land for me. And as I said, there's one character in this movie where it really does work, and that's Will Poulter's character. But a lot of the other characters, like Taya Leone is in this movie. She plays the mother of Will Poulter's character. She's like the matriarch of this big pharmaceutical company. And she's got this very dry wit to her. And I know the kind of character they're making, like this very vapid, materialistic, you know, obviously very rich person. And I'll be honest, watching the movie, when I was watching Taylor, and I like Taya Leone, by the way, she's a great actor, but when I was watching, I was like, yeah, she just kind of annoyed me. I was like, you're not funny to me.
Right.
Like, you're not really making me laugh with your like incessantly like I'm auditioning for the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Like that was the kind of comedy that she's like, if you watch The White Lotus, everyone
Parker
loves this
Posey.
season. Parker Posey, like she's so funny, and she is, and she's hilarious. Taya Leone's character is like an attempt at that, but it just doesn't work. Like imagine a less funny, not as comedic Parker Posey, and it's just like, okay, you're just a really rich, vapid person with no morals, and you're just not appealing to me. And I know Taya Leone's character is written to be funny, but it just didn't work for me.
And I think that leads to something that I think is better left for spoilers. That they did really that I would say they did right with this movie. So with something like Succession, the comedy really hits because it's very character driven. It's not just funny because of what they said. It's funny because this specific character says it, and it says a lot about who they are as a character, and it very much moves along their particular story arc. It's one of the sharpest written shows that I've ever seen, period. Like it's a rather incredible show. This is less sharply written, but let's be honest, we all can't write like the writers of Succession. That's top tier. So I'm not even judging this against that. But when you mention Taya Leone's character, I'll make sure to say her name here, Belinda, Belinda's character, her words are intentional for unfunny reasons, but like the reasons are correct in this movie. I just don't want to get too much into it yet in the spoiler section. But I was like, this is a section of the movie that they did really right, and I'll get into it when we get over there. Now everybody's like, "Hey, you're talking a lot about comedy. Is this a horror?" I sat down, and for the first hour of this movie, Damon, I was like, we fucked up. It's not a horror movie. It's like a fantasy comedy. At the almost exactly at the 1 hour mark, it turns into a horror movie. It is like it goes full blown into horror mode, and I was like, oh, we're saved. We don't have to dance around and try to decide if this is a horror movie or not. It turns into a horror movie like almost right at the midway point, and then continues on into the end, and is a horror movie through the end of this movie. You know, of course, with the elements that have built up in the first half, but the first half is very much, well, gosh, Damon, you know, I'm getting a little hamstrung here because we're talking about spoilery stuff, but it's a father-daughter story. Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega, which, by the way, something just seems off about that because Paul Rudd refuses to age and Jenna Ortega can look 15, but is probably, I don't know, about 25, 26 years old. So it's strange to see them like as father-daughter. I'm like, I don't know how to process what I'm seeing. But it's kind of about them, or is it? I think it's more of a spoiler question again. But these are the things that they set up. Basically, it's like there's a unicorn, there's a father and a daughter that are at a crossroads, and there's a greedy, money-hungry family that will stop at nothing to get a unicorn and exploit it some way, somehow. Damon, is it spoiler time?
Well, let me just mention one thing about the Paul Rudd Jenna Ortega thing because you mentioned that. And I got to talk about that real quick. I've as you know, I'm the story guy, I'm the writer guy, and there are tropes that slip into movies so often, and we've talked about this before, where it just feels somewhat like lazy storytelling. Now, first off, let me say this movie's too long. It's almost 2 hours long. This should have been 90 minutes out the door. Did not need to be an hour. I think it's an hour and 48 minutes. It does not need to be an hour and 48 minutes. It needs to be an hour and a half. It should not have been almost 2 hours. I was like, why is this still going? This is like you mentioned, it takes an hour to get to the horror. It should have taken maybe 40 minutes to get to the horror. They waited
I would
way
have said
too long
30
to get.
max.
Yeah, they went way too long. But here's the problem is you're dealing with, again, I understand a very generic trope of these kind of movies or comedies or just in general dramas even is a dysfunctional father-daughter, dysfunctional mother-son, whatever, dysfunctional kid-parent. And the problem, one of the biggest problems I have with this movie is they keep teasing that Jen Ortega and Paul Rudd's wife, Jen Ortega's mother, has died. That's why they're there together. But you never understand the real trauma of that. You never understood why they're necessarily disconnected from each other. You just go right into it, and they're just like, she's the disaffected teen, and he's the dorky dad. And I'm just like, can we just, I mean, literally, do you want to just do a color by numbers of like a dysfunctional family here? Because this just feels, and the problem is they never really delve into it. They actually try towards the end of the movie, and this is not a spoiler, like they try to like mend the fences of that fractured relationship, and it just feels so generic, and it just feels so like poorly. Like, here's the thing I'll say about this, and this is the point I wanted to get to. Paul Rudd and Jen Ortega's characters are the leads in this movie. Yeah. I cared far more about the pharmaceutical company family. They were the more interesting characters. They were actually like kind of the funny ones. They were, they had a dynamic that actually worked, and it was a little bit more multifaceted, as weird as that sounds. Jen Ortega and Paul Rudd were just kind of there. And I'm like, but they're the leads. And they were like the least interesting characters in this whole movie.
Well, they're the sort of characters that are doormats. I mean, basically. And I mean, what do you think, Damon? Spoiler time?
Yeah, let's get into spoilers. So if you haven't seen Death of a Unicorn, it is in theaters right now. If you can't tell, just for people who maybe stop, pause, and go watch the movie and come back in again, and we always tell you, go see the movie regardless of what we say.
Please. In the theater, by the way.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say I was not a big fan of this movie. It just did not land for me in a lot of ways, and I'll dig into the real minutia of that in spoilers. But Patrick, I mean, it just I don't know.
Uh,
It's not a movie that I'm going to rush to revisit. I guess is what I should say.
I'll say this. I don't think I will make an effort to watch this at home when it comes on again. But like weirdly, I'm just glad I saw it in a theater. If you're going to see it at all, like you love Paul Rudd or you love Jenna Ortega and you can never miss them. By the way, I love Richard Grant, so I got to see Richard E. Grant, whatever. I would much rather, I'm more glad that I saw it in a theater than if I would have sat at home and watched this. You will check out if you watch this at home. I promise you will. But yeah, let's do the spoilers.
Let's get into spoilers. So Patrick, I'll give you the floor to get into the spoiler conversation of Death of a Unicorn.
So they spend the first hour of this movie world building, and really to an imbalanced effect, and they're rather efficient getting us into Elliot and Ridley's characters. Jenna Ortega's Ridley and Paul Rudd is Elliot. On their drive over, right before they hit the unicorn, you can pick up very easily that mom died long ago, that dad is obsessed with work, and that Jenna Ortega or that Ridley is like this manic pixie girl. And if that phrase sort of triggers something in your brain, it's a trope. It's a written trope that we have dealt with for at least 30 years, I should say. It's this character. It's always a woman character who like has colored hair and kind of edgy clothing, and she's sort of goofy and weird, and the real world doesn't get her. It's a whole move, and it's typically done in romantic comedies or something like that. In this case, they used it in a father-daughter way, but that's who Ridley is to Elliot. You know, she's too weird, she's too off-putting. Lydia Dietz, this is the same thing in Beetlejuice, right? Delia and her dad, they can't stand her because she's too odd, she's too goth. They want her to be normal so they can just go about their lives like she's getting in the way of that. It's very much, I think, what he's pulling from. He's pulling from that idea, and how ironic because they played mother and daughter in Beetlejuice too. They get that out of the way really quick, and you realize that dad is trying to ingratiate himself to Odell, who is the magnate of this huge pharmaceutical company, because Odell is on his deathbed. And he's going there to ingratiate himself to Odell because that's what Odell has requested. He's like, I need to get to know you before I hand off, the decision making to you. And you get this sense from Elliot. He's like, if I land this, we're set for life. We're set for life. That's what's so important. And he's just dismissing her. He keeps shoving her down. He keeps pushing her down. They get there. They meet with the family. And, he really wants to rush and get to that. Like, let's sign those contracts. Let's turn me over. And they're like, hey, slow down. We want to get to know you. We want to get to know your daughter. And he's like, you really don't need to get to know my daughter. Like, she's fine. She's over there somewhere. Like, just ignore her. Meanwhile, she's traumatized because they ran over this unicorn that he bludgeons to death with a tire iron because it's like half dead. They stuffed it in the car, which I think you can tell from the trailer that happens. And this unicorn refuses to die, and it captures the attention of Odell, his wife Belinda, and his son Shepard. They come out and they're like, you hit a what now? A unicorn? Holy fucking shit. Now that I thought was a funny moment because they didn't want to say the words unicorn. They were trying to do verbal gymnastics to like rationalize what they were looking at. And then Ridley goes, it's a fucking unicorn. I was like, yeah, it's a unicorn. Like, let's move on. And right away, they noticed that the blood that got on Ridley and the blood that got on Elliot healed his eyesight. He was like nearsighted. That's gone. And it healed her. She had really hard acne on her face, and they made a point to emphasize it, and then it went away. And so they were like, well, we got an idea. What if we inject a little bit of that into Odell? Of course, he's got billions of dollars. All his doctors come in, they rush in, they inject him with it, and he goes from a withering, dying husk of a man to back to his old self, full of piss and vinegar. And he's like, I got a great idea. We're going to synthesize this, and we're going to make a miracle drug for the most elite and exclusive people who are suffering from serious diseases. This is going to make us trillions of dollars. And Elliot, you're in here, right in there with it. Congratulations, pal. You've found a miracle drug. You're going to be set for life. You're going to be probably a multi-billionaire. Elliot has achieved his goal. And then you find out that this baby unicorn's parents are coming for it, and the horror is about to ensue. That's why if you notice this was a long run up, it's because they spend the first hour establishing all of these things only to get to the horror that we know is coming. Am I wrong, Damon?
No, and I think that speaks to the biggest problem in this movie is they spend so long getting there. And like I said, Paul Rudd's character and Jenna Ortega's character, they're the leads, and yet they feel like they play second fiddle to the pharmaceutical family. Once you meet the pharmaceutical family, they become the interesting part of the movie. The dad Odell, who is sick and on his deathbed, but still a very clearly powerful man. His wife, who is just kind of like, almost, it seems like she's almost just waiting for him to die so she can have control a little bit. And then his son is just, very, very prototypical, like asshole, waspy, you could like he's very much like
he's a billionaire's son.
Yeah, he's a very billionaire son. Like he's just very much like I want to start my own music streaming company. That's not what he does. But like he's trying to make his own way in the world, yet using daddy's money.
Of course.
And he's very vapid and very materialistic and very on the surface. But again, and that's Will Poulter's character. I actually really like that character. That was probably the best part of the movie because he played that to perfection. He played the asshole billionaire son to perfection. And if you notice, like the interesting characters that those three, and then their butler and their staff of people that work around them, their doctors they bring in, and then Jenna Ortega and Paul Rudd just kind of like fade to the background, and they spend so much time with Jenna Ortega's character trying to dissect the history and mythology of these unicorns, and I understand that a big part of how this movie came together was Alex Sharpman discovering these real tapestries, the unicorn tapestries from the late 1400s, early 1500s, that tells this story of a unicorn. That's a real thing in history. They actually have you have 7 tapestries that tells the story. But boy, I don't know if he like went out and bought them or he just got really obsessed with them because that plays such a major part in this movie. Yet when you actually look at it, it never really matters. Like nothing that actually the only thing that really matters is Jenna Ortega's character says, this is going to end badly for us. And she deciphers that from the last part of the tapestry where it looks like the unicorns are basically killing the people who tried to capture them. That's really all we need to know. But they really spend a lot of time like microscoping these tapestries trying to find answers. And I'm just like, did we really need all that? It almost like when we talk about this movie being almost 2 hours long, like there was like 20 minutes of tapestry talk that could have just cut out. You would have missed nothing in this movie. The one key factor that Jenna Ortega, that Ridley figures out is these are not like sweet creatures of lore. Like they are going to turn on us and kill us all is effectively what she's trying to tell them. This is not going to end well. And sure enough, it doesn't end well. That's really the only message they needed, but boy, did they spend a lot of time on these fucking tapestries.
And I think what they're trying to do in those tapestries is create the rules of the movie. Your very favorite director of all time, Quentin Tarantino, says, get the rules out of the way as soon as possible. Make it quick and easy to digest. I agree with his statement fully. And I don't love every Quentin Tarantino movie, but I agree with his statement. Make your audience understand the rules as best as possible. Instead, what they do here in Death of a Unicorn is they try to stretch those rules out over basically a C-story arc. And I think what Alex Sharpman was trying to get at, he was trying to find a way to link Elliot, Ridley, and their late and the mother, like the mother that died, Ridley's mom. He was trying to find a way to make them all coalesce. I'm glad that he didn't do this thing where like mom is like revealed in some way, shape, or form. There's this thing where if they touch the unicorn horn, they do see like some sort of like galactic, weird, like Lovecraftian, ether. They go into that and you just I actually appreciated this. Then they come back and they go, "You won't believe what I saw over there." I like that part. Like more, actually more of that. There's another element of this movie they're guilty of, which is showing too much. But in that instance, it was smart. I think if they would have really tried to hone in on this relationship between Elliot and Ridley, I think you might have sold me more. What ends up happening is Elliot is the shittiest dad the whole movie. And then when the shit really hits the fan and they're basically dead, he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry because I really just wanted, I promised your mom when she was on her deathbed, because she died of cancer, by the way." And they kind of play into that idea like this could have saved your mom. He's like, "On her deathbed, I promised that I would make sure you never wanted for anything in life." And I think I lost sight. I lost sight of the ball is what I did, because really what I should have been focused on is your happiness, and I didn't do that. And then it's all good. They literally do that in that short amount of time. They do that. The rest of the movie is built out so much that their relationship, which to me is the interesting thing in this movie, is put on the back burner and solved in a quick bit of dialogue. And I like that didn't work for me. That didn't work for me. I was like, okay, it's all good. Now we're happy together. If they would have given me that same moment, exact same moment, and Elliot says the exact same things he says, and Ridley goes, "I hear you, but it's not good enough. So take it easy, Dad. Like if this unicorn kills you, I'm sorry, but like now I see who you are, and I'm gonna need some time. So this isn't just gonna work out." I would have respected that. That would have been a subversion of expectations instead of like, "Let's tie this up in a neat little bow." Instead, they went for the "Okay, Dad," and then like they're just cool from that point on. Now he does end up now. Will Poulter's character ends up being this guy who is the real problem. Yes, these unicorns are coming after them because they want their little baby unicorn back, and they're willing to fucking murder you to do it. So they are a terror and they are a threat. The real threat is Shepard, this guy Will Poulter's character, because he will stop at nothing to get the stuff. He's been snorting unicorn horn like pretty much the whole movie because he's got chemical dependencies and stuff. They're kind of playing on the tropes of the billionaire son. And he's just like, I just need it for forever I want it for. I don't know. I'll sell it to my buddy for like a $1 billion or something. I don't give a shit. Like, he's going to fuck it up if it gets in his hands, and he's willing to kill them to do it. So he becomes the actual threat, and then he ends up stabbing Elliot and killing him. And then the unicorns, again with that tapestry lore, decide that they love Jenna Ortega, I guess, because of the tapestry. It didn't really work for me. And then ultimately they resurrect not just Elliot, but the baby unicorn too. And in the end, they fucking donkey kick the shit out of Will Shepard and kill him, out of Shepard, and kill him. And then the police show up right at that moment, and Elliot and Ridley get rescued. But Damon, the unicorns, they come to their rescue and save them. Okay, all right, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. So
Sure.
two things I want to say. First off, with the relationship between Ridley and Elliot, they never totally explained to you how old Ridley is supposed to be, but I understand
College aged.
Yeah, like 20, 21,
Right.
right around that age. Now, I'm not saying you can't build a relationship with your parents at that age, but it almost felt like if you're going to use the "your mom died" trope and we're going to, we have a fractured relationship, it almost would work. I think it would have worked better if she was like 16 or 17, like they were still living in the same house. Because it almost felt like she had no real connection. And they do say early on, they're like, he's basically bringing her on this trip as a prop because this pharmaceutical family, they're like, "We need to meet you and we need to meet your family to know what kind of people we're getting into business to." So she's not even there because he's trying to mend fences. She's there because he needs her as a prop to convince these people to hire him and give him control over the company so he can make millions of dollars and provide for her. So, yes, he promised her mom that he was going to provide for her, she would want for nothing, but really, she's not even there for that purpose. She's just there to serve as a prop to make sure that this family, they realize he's a good dad and he's a loving father, but really he's not. He's just going for the money. And I think it would have worked better if she was like 16 and they had to live together. Like, they were just like we grew up with parents. I did not get along with my parents very well at all. You know what I mean? Like, and when I turned
Yeah.
18 and went to college, I was like, thank God I can get away from these motherfuckers. Um, and at that point, like, did I still have a relationship with my parents at that point? Yes, but it was very like very tertiary. Like, you know what I mean? Like when I had to go home
Yeah.
for holidays, things like that. But like at 18, I was pretty much on my own. Um, they kind of make it a point where like they don't really know each other. They're not really around each other, and she's just here as a prop to help him get this job. But again, I think it would have worked better if they're at least, like they were forced to live in the same house. You know what I mean? They were forced to be around each other because it's almost like I'm almost not understanding why Jenna Ortega's character even agreed to fucking go. Because
Yeah.
if she's 16, she didn't have a choice, right?
She
Like she
has to
lived
go.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's like 20, 21 years old. Like, why didn't she just tell me, Dad, fuck off? Like, I'm not going. Like, you're not, I'm like, over 18. Like, they never really explain that. And it's just a weird part of the movie. And it kind of ruins that, like, the dysfunctional father daughter relationship, which I understand that's what they're building this whole thing on. It's almost like, are we kind of past that? Like, she's like 21. Like, why would you know what I mean? Like, just,
Yeah.
I think if they would have made her like 15 or 16, a little younger, to where like she has to be around her dad, and she's like a year away from college, and like at that point, because that's the trope of movies. When you get to college, you're not really making up with your parents at that point because you're on your own.
It's a great excuse for her when he does that mea culpa to just go, I'm going to college next year. I don't ever need to see you again. Thanks for the
Yeah,
apology. I'm good. And like then he knows he's lost her. And you're so right. Like Jenna Ortega could play 17. She could play an 18-year-old senior in high school. Like she could. I bet the producers and Alex probably got inside their own heads and go, people know she's not 18. I don't know if that's going to work. It's like, it'll work. We used to put people in 90210 were 30 years old playing high school students. Like
yeah.
Jenna Ortega can pass as a 18-year-old high school student and definitely have that connection where it's just like, I'm leaving at the end of this year. I don't need you. And you've been so shitty to me on this trip. I'm out. Gotta go. But I think you're right. You nailed it. It's like she's clearly out of the house. She's clearly like an adult, and it's like why would she give a shit? Honestly, like, and they do establish that yes, he is using her as a prop, and then immediately when he realizes his prop isn't working, he treats her like shit. That goes to my next point, which is if you hate Paul Rudd, which everyone's going, what? Why would I hate Paul Rudd? This is the movie. That he's a shitbag in this movie, and not in like a good way, and just sort of he's like a doormat. You know what I mean? He's willing to just sell out his daughter so quickly to just be sort of liked by these shitty billionaires. Like it makes Paul Rudd look like absolute shit. And I was like, wow, like I never thought I'd see a movie where I disliked Paul Rudd. And I know it's intentional. They want him to be the bad dad, but he's also the nice bad dad because he's Paul Rudd and he's got to play the nice bad dad. I was just like, you did my boy Paul Rudd dirty. Like he didn't need to be this bad, or make him like stretch it out, make him an actual villainous dad who instead of that mea culpa turns around and goes, you know what, it was a big mistake bringing you here. None of this would have happened if you wouldn't been in that car with me. This is what I get for trying to be a good dad to you. Clearly, we don't get along. I should have just fucking left you a long time ago. He should have tripled down on being a shitty dad in that moment. Like then I would have been like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. And then, yeah, it creates a new thread, a new thing to unravel. But at least it would have been something that I think I could have bought into. No, I don't think I could have bought into this.
I think the problem is because they establish a relationship as combative right away, and even at the end of the movie, when Paul Rudd's character has that mea culpa, and he says, "I promised your mom you would never want for nothing." He's built into being such a dick and such an asshole by that point. Of like, doesn't seem to care a whole lot about his daughter. And again, they never really truly establish like the relationship between the mom. Like they keep kind of teetering on it. They mention it a couple of times, but like there's no real attachment there. Like it's just again very generic. Like your mom died. Okay, you understand that very
Yeah,
early.
she looks through some photos. Like that's about it. Like there's
Yeah,
no.
yeah. Like there's no emotional connection there. And like they're really, to be honest with you, even by the end of the movie, like they don't really redeem Paul Rudd. Like I'm thinking about movies we've
Not
reviewed,
really.
like a movie like Krampus. Like Krampus is a movie where you have Adam Scott's character is kind of like this, dad, like work focused dad. He tries to be a dad, but him and his wife are both kind of like in their own little worlds. And by the end of the movie, they've kind of come around. They realize like it's the spirit of Christmas. Right? I know this is a really weird one. It's not a horror movie, but like I think of a movie like Jersey Girl, Kevin Smith's Jersey Girl, where Ben Affleck is this doesn't want to be a dad. He kind of falls into fatherhood by accident because his wife, played by Jennifer Lopez, dies, and he ends up being stuck caring for his daughter, but he doesn't really want to be a dad, and he basically shoves the kid off onto his dad, and eventually his dad's like, I've had enough of this shit. Like, it's time for you to be a father. And so when he finally does, he does actually become a very loving, caring father, but then late in the movie, Ben Affleck's character finally snaps, and he's just like, if you remember that scene, I'm assuming you've seen Jersey Girl,
Yeah.
where he's just like, you and your mother, you took your life away, baby, you little shit. And I was like, oh my God. Like, and that's just like the real emotion of him, just like
Yeah,
how
raw,
his entire
yeah.
life, like very raw. And again, he spends the rest of the movie making it up to his daughter. And he's like, you know what? I don't want to be this powerful music manager, publicist anymore. I want to be a dad. And it's like, you see the arc of the character. There is no arc of Paul Rudd's character.
No.
He's a dick at the beginning. He's a dick in the middle, and he's still kind of a dick at the end. And even when him and Jenna Ortega kind of make up, you're kind of like, yeah, but you really didn't do anything. You didn't really do anything to redeem yourself. All you did is just say, hey, by the way, when your mom was dying, I promised that you would want for nothing. So that's why I'm doing this. And you're like, but that really doesn't.
Yeah, I just
really
want my
explain.
dad. Like at the end of the day, I just want my dad to be a good dad to me, and you haven't. You've been a shit dad to me this whole time.
Yeah, and also like they make it the way they make it sound is like this guy's a pauper. Like they're making it sound like he's like dead broke. Like he's
Yeah.
clearly already a lawyer.
He's a lawyer for the company.
Yeah, so it's not like you want for how much are they paying you, dude? Like you're not. It's not like you're making 10 cents an hour. Like he's making it sound like we'll want for nothing ever again. Well, dude, you're already a lawyer, pretty high up in this company.
He's
What are we
making
talking about?
He's making $500,000 a year. Like
Yeah,
on the low end is what he's making.
Yeah, I'm just like, what are we talking about here? Like he's saying want for nothing. Like, dude, if you were like living on the street, you're Billy Ray Valentine and trading places, and they put you in a position to where you're a millionaire. Okay, then I get it. You're not. You're already a corporate lawyer in this pharmaceutical company. They're not paying you peanuts, dude. Like there's no redeeming quality about this character. And as you said, I like Paul Rudd very much as an actor. This is probably the first time in a movie where I was like, dude, I don't like Paul Rudd in this movie. He's a dick in this movie. And they never change him. Never. He never really changes.
No. He basically dies being that exact dad, and then the unicorns resurrect him, and then at the end of the movie you understand that at some point in the future they are going to heal as a father daughter. But that's it. You know, they don't give you any of that satisfaction inside the movie. They just think, oh, a line or two will clear that up, right? It's like, no, like it feels so disingenuous when they're in that cop car riding away that she's like, oh, I'm going to rest my head on my dad. I love my dad so much. It's like, I'd be like, man, I'm still kind of pissed at you. Like by the way, she's a grown woman who actually has a little bit of like faculty in her emotions to be like, I hear what you're saying, but that doesn't make us like square yet. Like this is gonna take some time. But she's being like a little kid in that moment, and it's like, well, pick your poison here. What is she a little kid or is she a 21-year-old girl? Like pick. And it's uneven, Damon. And again, and the other uneven thing, he's acting like a pauper. He probably makes over $500,000 a year. That also doesn't make sense. So it's just it's shit like that adds up. And when you go, why didn't I like this movie? It's because all those little things add up to going, this just doesn't, none of this is clicking. The puzzle pieces aren't fitting.
It's funny because I think the story, the message, so to speak, in this movie is about the pharmaceutical company and how, we've seen the greed of the pharmaceutical industry in this country where people are paying, $800 for a bottle of insulin, for life-saving insulin. And I think that's like, they're not so, it's not subtle, by the way.
It's
they're
not subtle.
Trying to make it, but they're basically saying like, this is what a pharmaceutical company will do. Like they'll harvest a mythical creature to harvest it so they can make the most money. Like they're basically telling you this pharmaceutical company is greedy and they're evil and they're billionaires and now they want to become multi-billionaires. And that's, they're just basically like, you could replace what's the Leopold? They're the Leopold family. If they were the Pfizers, it would work just as well. Like that's all they're trying to do. Now again, I understand that, and I can certainly have a lot of issues with the pharmaceutical industry in this country. It's a whole other subject. But the problem is, like, you're supposed to. So, one of two things. When you've got this really materialistic, greedy, evil pharmaceutical company, you want one of two things to happen to give you a redeeming quality in this movie. One, Shepard or the son or the wife, somebody in that family kind of realizes, holy shit, we've been doing wrong this entire time. We got to do right by this dead unicorn. We got to do right. We got to give the unicorn back, and we got to do right by this. Or Paul Rudd's character, as the dad who realizes he's a shitty dad, says, you know what? Fuck all of y'all. I'm going to save my daughter. Fuck this unicorn. Fuck your money. Fuck all of you.
Yeah.
The problem is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, Paul Rudd's character spends 98% of this movie desperately trying to become a Leopold. He wants to be the shitty billionaire. Like his entire character arc is like trying to be the shitty pharmaceutical company guy, not the other way around.
That is the major problem. Now, if at the end of the second act, he did what you just said, which is he's like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm saving my daughter. Like I don't care about any of this stuff. He goes all the way up until he can't go no more. The Leopolds have been slaughtered at this point, except for Shepard, who's kind of running around trying. He's a new problem in the story, but he's literally just trying, even to the end. He's like holding on to the piece of horn. He's like, oh, if I can steal this piece of horn away, I'll be a billionaire. Because I only have 2.5 million in the bank right now. Oh, maybe if I keep this, right? It's weird. So he's so late to the game. But if he had done it right at the end of the second act, or even act like right in the middle of the second act, and then the family, the Leopolds, turn on him and create new problems for him that require him and his daughter to work together. Geez, it's almost like it writes itself. Like when you make those choices. But they dug so far in, and it's funny because earlier I was like, hey, it'd be really nice if you subverted expectations. This is an instance where the Paul Rudd character definitely didn't need to subvert my expectations by being a total dick until the very end. Until the end where he's just like, hey, sorry. And his daughter's like, okay. Like that doesn't work. You have to earn that. And you had a bunch of movie back here, the last 90 plus minutes of movie to do that, to earn it. And they didn't earn it until they tried to earn it in a piece of dialogue. And that's not going to fly. It just won't. But I do want to touch on the Odells for a second. This, indeed, the Leopold family, this is the one thing this movie does right. Now, to lift the veil a little bit, I do video production. I do it for a very, very boring stuff most of the time. Thankfully, like my short film is out there. It's out in film festivals currently. The Path, check it out if you can find it at one of the film festivals. But what I do mostly for video is corporate stuff. Big corporations a lot like the Odell Corporation. The one thing this movie does right is show that they, with a lot of colorful corporate language, try to justify terrible things. This family does that in 3 different ways. Shepard is a coked up dope, a son of a billionaire, incompetent, not smart, and just spoiled by his own privilege. And he's really just in the way of his mother and father. His mother, Belinda, is clearly a philanthropist. She doesn't have a job. She uses her husband's billions to make the world a better place. But she knows the value of $1 and she understands it. And so she uses her philanthropic language to justify what they're doing. And she really attempts to make, because the whole time Ridley is like these stories, they don't add up, and it's dangerous and it's unethical what you want to do. And she tries with all of her verbal gymnastics to philanthropically justify what they're doing. And then eventually Ridley smells that bullshit and she's like, you're just an evil lady who uses colorful words to try and make this make sense. So fuck off and die. I don't give a shit about you. And then you've got Odell at the top. Odell is the magnate. He is the guy who built this empire, and he built it by being ruthless. And in the beginning, and this is what I love, and we'll get into a little bit more in categories. In the beginning, you see him as a multifaceted guy. Like, he doesn't just come off as straight evil. He's not, and I've met a lot of CEOs, Damon. I've met a lot of men worth $1 billion. They're actually really personable. They can look you in the eye, they can shake your hand and make you feel like $1 million. That is what Odell can do once he's kind of reinvigorated from the unicorn blood. And then you see the turn. You see why he became the success. Because he knows, all right, if no one's up for this, if no one is down to do what we are going to have to do, which is slit some throats, I'll show you how it's done. Because in the business world, you got to do that. You got to go for the throat. And then so he has an arc. And it's just what the great Damon Martin mentioned earlier. The Leopold family has an arc, and it moves correctly for them. But you'd think that they were the stars of the show. If that's the case, they're not. They're not. It's Jenna Ortega and Paul Rudd. But these characters are far more fleshed out. They did get that part of it right. And I think my audience reacted to those characters much more strongly. Like when they were spewing a line of bullshit, the audience picked up on it and laughed like, haha, you evil motherfuckers. Like they understood it. It was the best part of this movie. I wouldn't mind seeing Alex Sharfman try something like a Succession, like talk about, some, clearly he understands the language of these really privileged few. I'd like to see him play with that arena a little bit. And he's like, hey, Patrick, guess what? Only horror fucking sells these days, pal. No one wants to see a corporate drama. He's right. But he had the knack for it here.
I think like I said, and the Leopolds, the pharmaceutical magnates, like I said, they are easy to understand and their motivations are easy to understand. And it's like, again, going back to Succession, I said this because I was a late arriver for Succession. I didn't see it until the second season was about to start. Someone's like, dude, you got to watch Succession. So I watched the first season, and then from then on out, I watched the last three, as they happen. And I was about midway through the first season binging it on HBO, and I was just like, you know what I realized about this show? I love it. It's one of the best written shows ever. It's hilarious. The characters are great. Not a single redeeming quality about any of these people. These are all it's like varying degrees of evil fucking people. Like none of them are good. Like none of them are redeeming. Like you can find yourself like my favorite character was Tom. Tom didn't have any redeeming qualities, but I liked his character. He was still a horrible, horrible person. And I was like halfway through the show, and I was like, this is like, because I know like when the anti-hero became like a big thing on TV with Tony Soprano and Walter White and people like rooting for them, and they're like, you're kind of missing the point here, because like Tony Soprano's an evil guy. Like he's a fucking evil mobster. Like he's a pretty vile person. Walter White is a pretty vile person. You're not really supposed to root for them. I think Succession was the show that was just like, okay, you're not going to root for them. You can like them. You can say they're a funny character. They have funny lines. They're a character you like, but you're not actually going to root for them because they are just evil, evil people. And I think that's what they get right about the Leopolds. Like they are just vile, evil, materialistic billionaires. As you mentioned, like even with Odell and like you mentioned the wife Belinda, like she's doing the philanthropic charities. But she's the one who's doing the philanthropy, being like, okay, we're going to build a well in Ethiopia, but I need to be there, and there need to be cameras. Now, are you really doing it because you want to build a well in Ethiopia, or is you doing it because you want the photo?
And I'm flying on a private jet, and they're building me a small mansion there so I can stay there during the entire construction, and then this is a major tax write-off for the company. Like,
Yeah, you're gonna see the photos of me holding hands with the children and handing them water, and then as soon as I get out of frame, I'm gonna wash my hands and shoo them the fuck away. Like that's the kind of
yeah,
philanthropic person she is. She's not really doing, is it really philanthropy if you need a fucking photo op to do it? That's the kind of philanthropy she's doing. She's not doing it, she's not doing it in that way. She's not altruistic at all. She's doing it
no,
because it looks good for the family. And Shepard, which is why I appreciate Shepard as a character in this movie, which is, again, I think Will Poulter is great in this movie, is he is just the perfect bratty billionaire son who doesn't give a fuck about anybody, and he has all the money in the world, and you know it. And he doesn't mind telling you that. And like they have a butler named Griff, who is played by the great Anthony Carrigan, and he's just out in the pool at one point talking to Paul Rudd's character. Like after the first night, he's in the hot tub, and he's like, "Hey, you want to jump in here?" And he's like, "Oh, I didn't bring any swim trunks." He's just like, "Griff, swim trunks." He's out in the middle of the pool. We have no idea where the fuck Griff is at, but that's just like this. This is how much of a dick this guy is. He's just like yelling for his butler. Like he doesn't call him or say, "Hey man, can you bring?" No. Griff, bring swim trunks, and he's like, "No, I'm good." And he's like, "Griff, never mind." Like I love the simplicity of just that materialistic asshole. And like I said, and then you got Jenna Ortega as Ridley, and she is. I know, like, she's very one note. Like, she's kind of caring, but she's kind of like this, disaffected teenager. You know what I mean? Like, if you had her intro to "Welcome to the Black Parade" play by My Chemical Romance every time she's on screen, it would just fit her character. Like, she's one stroke away from being like, "I need to go see My Chemical Romance. Can we please go to that concert right now?" And by the way, I love My Chemical Romance. I'm just saying, like that emo teen, and you're just like, all right, like I get, and because while she's the one who kind of figures it out, like, oh, these unicorns are not really meant to be fucked with, and like they're gonna turn on us, you still don't really understand the motivation of her character. Like they never really dive into who she is, much less the relationship she has with her dad, which again speaks to the heart of the problem in this movie. The dickhead pharmaceutical company is much more fleshed out than the father and daughter, and like they're just kind of there. Like they're just kind of there the entire movie.
Yeah, I mean, this movie has problems. It really does.
Patrick, with that being said, let's get into categories. As you can tell, we have issues. Much, much like Paul Rudd's character in this movie. Let's talk about best performances. We always do each and every week in the show. So, Patrick, when it comes to Death of a Unicorn, who gets your best performance?
I absolutely love Richard E. Grant, and he stole the show for me because I love everything I see him in. He's in some of my favorite movies of all time, and there's a reason. He's just got it. He's got the Richard E. Grant thing going on, and if you've ever seen, I guess the most broad sense of it was he played old Loki in season 1 of Loki.
Yeah.
If anyone's like, who the hell's Richard E. Grant? That's who he is. He's in some other indie movies that I love called Can You Ever Forgive Me? He's incredible in that. And he's in a movie called With Nail and I from like the 1980s that is fucking phenomenal. It's really, really good. And I just love him. And like I said, I talked about his character arc earlier. I thought it was one of the more fleshed out character arcs in the movie. And yeah, that's just plain and simple. He's a great actor, and he did not disappoint here.
Also, did you mention Saltburn? Did you mention that for?
That's right. He was the dad in Saltburn. That's right. But he's great in everything. That's why it's fucking Richard E. Grant. Man.
He's incredible. He's also in Game of Thrones. Like he's incredible. Everything he's in, he's good in. He's a great actor. Yeah, he's so, like, you can tell he's so classically trained. It's kind of like watching watching, he doesn't put on as many masks as this guy, but it's kind of like watching Gary Oldman. Like every time you see Gary Oldman, he's good. Like you just know he's going to deliver. Like no matter what, if he's playing Drexel in True Romance, or he's playing
Patrick Stewart is what I would kind of compare.
Yeah,
because Oldman's kind of a chameleon, which he's fantastic. He's a very good actor. But yeah, I think of Richard E. Grant, and I think of Patrick Stewart, who's just there's a gravitas to those guys, and that you just realize these are what classically trained like stage actors are, and the best of the best. Keith David, by the way, a very similar guy. He's a phenomenal stage actor. He's just got a presence to him, and you go, I'm in. Whatever it is, I'm drinking it in, and that's Richard E. Grant.
Yeah, 100%. He's great. So my best performance in this movie, as I've kind of mentioned, you probably figured it out already by now, is Will Poulter.
Yeah.
He is, again, for all the comedy they attempted in this movie that just kind of fell short for me, and for all the just not character development, or at least character arc for Paul Rudd, or even, again, like Jenna Ortega's character is not dislikable. She's just kind of there. Like she just,
Yeah.
it almost looks like she's window dressing for so much of this
We're
movie.
we're in the same perspective as her dad. Like we
Yeah,
don't really see her.
Yeah, she's just a prop. Here's Jenna Ortega. Will Poulter is by far the best part of this movie because he actually provides comedy, and like they're in that trailer when they first find that, like they first killed, well, they think they killed the unicorn wakes up very Tommy Boy, where it's in the back of the car bucking its way out of the car, and then the unicorn sticks its head out, and the guard just sort of shoots it in the head. We're like, oh shit, and they lay it out in front of everybody, and Will Poulter's character's like, I don't feel like I should be in swim shorts for this moment. It's such a dumb comment, but it works so well for his character because he's such a waspy, like just a polo shirt wearing, too short golf short wearing dork. And he delivers the only really truly funny moments in this movie. Like and then when he starts snorting the unicorn horn, it's just perfect. Like he is by far, like if I watch this movie again, and I'm not saying I'm rushing to do that, but if I was going to watch this movie again, first off, edit out about 19, 20 minutes, and you just make me the Will Poulter supercut, I'd probably like this movie because he's actually really good.
Check that out on YouTube in about a year. There will be a Will Poulter supercut from Death of a Unicorn. And it's very apropos, Damon, because my MVP was Will Poulter. Mostly because of the comedic effect, but also for that third act, because you couldn't get away with this movie just being them running from unicorns in the shadows. It wasn't going to be enough. Like, by the way, unicorns, as far as we know, don't talk. If they did, that might have been kind of interesting. Like maybe they should have played that angle. They didn't. What you have in that third act, when the shit hits the fan, is Shepard. He's the enemy. And he can talk and he can tell you what his goals are and his designs are and why you should be afraid of him. Basically because he's a coked up unicorn, mama's boy who now has a bow and arrow and doesn't know how to shoot it. And that creates a problem. It creates complications, and complications help us get through movies. And he becomes the complication of the movie. That's very important to being an MVP.
It's so funny because I always remember Will Poulter, the first time I ever saw him was in a movie called We're the Millers, which is a really funny movie, by the way. There's a comedy I really enjoy with Jason Sudeikis and Jennifer Aniston and Emma Roberts. He's great in that movie. And then he became a beefcake. Like years later, he's like this big hulking, like good-looking dude. And of course, he's in The Bear, which he's incredible in The Bear. I think that's probably my favorite Will Poulter role is The Bear. He's great in that show. But like we saw him in Midsummer, and he's just like, oh yeah, he's kind of like a dick in that movie. Like, and he kind of a different kind of dick, but he's very much a dick in that movie too. But yeah, like he's just become like he's a really, really good actor, and he really does kind of steal the show here. So for me, MVP, I know I usually go writer, director, studio, but I'm actually going a different direction. And this guy was the other redeeming quality of this movie because I absolutely adore this guy, everything he's in, and that's Anthony Carrigan as Griff, the butler. If you've never watched Barry, the TV show Barry, there is a comedy that is absolutely fucking hilarious. And Anthony Carrigan is brilliant in that show. And he was so good in that show, in fact, that his character was supposed to get shot and killed at the end of the first episode. He was so good that, why am I not thinking of his name?
Bill Hader.
Bill Hader, thank you. Bill Hader liked it so much, he's like, you know what? We're not going to kill you. We're going to stick you around. He ends up, I think he won a couple Emmys, if I'm not mistaken. He won some awards.
Yeah, I believe he did.
Great. And he's very much a side character. He plays the butler, but there's a great moment late in the movie where they're like, okay, we need to give the baby back to its parents and it'll leave us alone. and Griff is like, and like throughout the entire movie, he's like the doormat. He's the butler. Like
Yeah.
at one point, Paul
He
Rudd's
wipes their
character is
asses
like,
for them.
he looks at the food and he's like, "Is there not like an omelet station?" He kind of rolls his eyes, walks away, and comes back. He's like, "Here's your omelet, dickhead." Like he didn't say that, but like,
Yeah.
And Paul Rudd's
it's,
like, "Oh,
it's not just
thanks."
any omelet. It was like a French omelet. It was like a really nice omelet. He brings it over
so
in
like,
5 minutes.
And like I said, that moment when Will Poulter's character is like, "Griff, swim trunks." He's just that guy. But at the end, you kind of realize that he's actually a really capable person. So he's like, the lights get shut off, and he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna go trip we need to go trip the door outside so we can get the gate open. We can escape in the cars and get away from these unicorns." And he has like the great plan. And he's like, "All right, let's do this." And even then, even when everyone's dead and they're all half the people are dead and they're in total peril, they're like, we need to figure out who's best suited for this. And they point the flashlight to poor Griff, and they're like, "You know how to operate this." And Griff's like, "Really? Fuck." And he's just such a great, like, he's the other part of this movie that actually works. And I just love him. So yeah, Anthony Carrigan worked really well for me in this movie.
And I like that he didn't try to pull from what was funny about the Barry character. He's like a completely different type of person. Because if you know him from Barry, he's a very affected character. Like it's a like very heightened character, very over the top Bill Hader kind of character. It's nothing like that in this movie. He plays something completely differently, and that excites me for his upcoming role in Superman. I'm like, cool, this guy's got range. Like he really does. Like he's not just that one note. Because I think most people just know him from that. He can do a lot of different things.
Yeah, he's good. He was really good. And I just like I said, his character was, as I said, he's the butler, and he is kind of like window dressing in the background for a big part of the movie. But when he steps up towards the latter half, he's really good. And I was like, I'm glad he's in this movie because he made it better.
Yeah.
That's why he gets my MVP. Patrick, next category. Let's talk about best scare. Now, I'll be honest. When I saw this category, I was like, "Oh God, what was the best scare in this movie?" Because it wasn't like I did come up with one, but I was like, and to be clear, and to be totally clear, I don't want people to listen to this who are this deep in, and if you haven't seen it, it is a horror movie. There are definitely horror elements. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah,
This is 100% a horror comedy. It's just not like there's not really like good scary moments necessarily, but there's a couple. So, Patrick, what was your best scary moment in Death with a Unicorn?
I almost left this category out because the scares weren't coming. The gore was coming. The horror elements of it were coming. Just the scares weren't until this moment. And that is, like the unicorns, they affect electricity. So the closer they are to something, it seems like they can manipulate it, turn it on and off. And Elliot's looking out of a door. He's like peeking out of a door, like a cracked open door. And the lights are like flickering on and off, classic horror style. And they flicker on, nothing's there. And they flicker off, and you just know, you're like, a fucking unicorn's going to show up, right? And it flickers back on. There's a unicorn right in the camera's face, screaming, ready to fucking, gore him. I was like, you know what? That was a pretty good scare. I thought more were coming, but more really didn't come. That was kind of the only one. I know you picked one more, and I think that was the only other time I thought that was appropriate for a scare.
So funny enough, I'm actually changing my answer from what I thought it was. As we talked about the podcast, the one moment that was jarring, I'm not gonna say scary, jarring, was when they had the Tommy Boy moment in the back of the truck and the unicorn is trying to escape and it sticks its head out and the whole group of people are like, "Oh shit, this unicorn's still alive." And then the guard just comes over and shoots it in the fucking head. I was just like, I didn't see that coming. So I'm not saying necessarily scary as much as jarring. I just didn't see them like literally popping it in the head with a gun. The guard comes over and just goes, boop. The thing just falls over dead. I was like, God damn. So it's not really scary as much as like, I just didn't see that. Much like early in the movie after they hit the unicorn initially, Jenna Ortega is kind of drawn to this trance touch in the horn, and Paul Rudd's character comes over with the fucking tire iron and just starts beating it to death. And you're like, Jesus Christ. So jarring, maybe more than scary, but it was jarring.
Yeah.
Patrick, next category. Let's talk about best gore. Now, again, while this isn't a traditionally scary movie, there's a lot of gore in this movie. They really do a good job with that. So, Patrick, what was your best gore in Death of a Unicorn?
This is that point in the movie theater where I was furiously writing notes down because I was like, oh shit, here comes the gore. Like I didn't realize it was going to come fast and furious. And there's a lot of gore moments in this movie, but I really couldn't get over the gore of mom getting gutted. Taya Leone's character finally gets hit with with one of these unicorn horns, and then the other unicorn. There's a mom and a dad unicorn. They get in together and they both impale her, and then proceed to rip her apart. And then the last shot is all of her guts completely spilled out. I think it's over the top of a car, if I'm not mistaken.
It's a pool table, I think. It's a
Oh,
pool table.
oh yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, she's on top of something, and it's just like, holy shit. I mean, literally, you see the entire insides of Taya Leone spill out over a table. And I was like, Jesus Christ, that's fucking gory.
Yeah, that was a great one. That's probably the better answer. And I was almost going to go with earlier in the movie when the first doctor gets killed because they're transporting out the unicorn, trying to get it out of the house. And at this point, they think they found just a gold mine to make money, and they're trying to transport. And then the unicorns show up to attack, and it kind of stabs him through. And his guts fall out too. Like they full on gore.
That's
him,
right.
His guts fall out too. That's another one. But for me, I think the one that it wasn't even jarring as much. It was just a good kill, and that was Shepard getting donkey kicked by the fucking unicorn because it just blasts him, and when he goes flying and slams face down, his face just gets turned into mush, and you see his guts like turn inside out because he just got, not only did he get donkey kicked, he got donkey kicked by a mystical unicorn, so it's even more powerful. And he just goes fucking flying, and his whole face is turned into mush. And I really like that one because it was like kind of unexpected the way it happened.
Yeah, it was a good classic horse kill, which you never see.
Yeah, I like that one. Next category, Patrick, what is your best mythical monster movie? Now, this is a movie about unicorns. I'm not sure I've ever seen a movie about unicorns that didn't involve like My Little Pony or some shit. I don't know.
Something nice and whimsical.
Something nice like that. There are plenty of mythical horror films out there, though, Patrick. So for you, what is your favorite mythical monster movie?
I had to go with Antlers, directed by the incredible Scott Cooper, produced by Guillermo del Toro, and the monster in question, the mythical monster in question, is the Wendigo, and the Wendigo in that movie is bone chilling. Like, it's very, very, very disturbing. I know Ritual is another one that I think people often reference when they talk about the Wendigo. I think the one in Antlers is even more diabolical and scary. It's one of those movies that came out in the heart of the pandemic and was criminally underseen, but it's one of the most bleak and disturbing movies out there, and its depiction of the Wendigo is truly horrifying.
I was not as big of a fan of Antlers as you were, but I didn't mind it. I just didn't love it. And I was almost going to cheat with this category because I was thinking, like, what is my favorite one? It just combines a lot of different elements of these mythical creatures, and that's Cabin in the Woods, which is a movie I love.
Oh, yeah.
You're not a big fan of, but I didn't go with that. I wanted to be more specific. The movie I decided to go with is a little movie called The Djinn by our friends David Charbonnier and Justin Powell.
Jealous I didn't come up with this.
Now, again, to be totally upfront and honest, we've become buddies with these guys. They're incredible filmmakers, but we had them on the show to talk before, and we were talking about The Boy Behind the Door, and we also talked about The Djinn. And The Djinn is a movie that takes place inside of an apartment. An apartment. How they make it work, and it works so fucking well. But the Djinn is again, it's a Middle Eastern prophecy of basically of a genie, for lack of a better word. And this Djinn is so fucking scary in this movie and so disturbing. And the fact that they make it work with a child and an apartment. And I live in an apartment. We have like 5 rooms. We don't have a house. We have
that was a 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah, we have 2 bedrooms, a living room, and 2 bathrooms. Like, we're a 5-room, and our living room is a studio. It's a big studio, so we have like a giant open space. There's not a whole lot of hiding spaces, even though I have a big ass apartment. It's still an apartment. They made it work, and it was fucking chilling. There were some really terrifying moments in that movie, and the Djinn in that movie, it's got a bit of a shapeshifter, and it kind of takes on different forms, and it's fucking terrifying. If you haven't seen the Djinn, highly, highly recommend to go see that movie.
Now I'm just on a kick about those two, about Justin Powell and David Charbonnier's The Djinn, because it's a 2-bedroom apartment. So it's a smaller apartment than Damon's, much smaller. So a little dinky LA apartment. The kid doesn't even talk. because he doesn't have a voice. So there's no dialogue. There's 2 bedrooms, and there's a monster. They never leave the apartment for 90 minutes, and you're gripped to your seat. These guys are geniuses. Stop what you're doing, except we'll finish this podcast, and then go watch The Djinn and go watch 2 geniuses at work. These are the 2 best directors working in horror right now. They also did The Boy Behind the Door. Go see those movies, and then coming very soon to Shudder is a movie called Push that they directed that I loved. I absolutely loved this. That's a full-throated 90s thriller. Those guys are great. Go see them.
Push is phenomenal. I've also seen it. Highly recommend it. These guys can do no wrong. They've kind of like entered that territory where it's like, yeah, like I'm going to definitely tune in no matter what they do.
And nobody's talking about these guys. It's criminal. Like, yeah. I'm so glad you brought them up. Everyone needs to know about those guys.
The Djinn is fucking terrifying for what it is. I mean, not even what it is. I'm just saying, like, the fact they did it all. I mean, go back and listen to our episodes. It's going back a couple years where we had them on the show. But I was like, I don't know how you did it because it's a fucking apartment building and a child who doesn't talk. He didn't scream.
None of that. It's an apartment. It's not an apartment building. It's an apartment. That's it. That's it. It's a 2-bedroom apartment in LA, which if you've ever been to LA, 2-bedroom apartments are the smallest possible places you could live in. I don't know how they did it. It's a miracle.
And it's a really scary movie, and it really does, like, the mythical area of, like, the Djinn itself is terrifying. The movie's scary as hell, and it works so well. And like I said, I had seen The Boy Behind the Door first, then I saw The Djinn. I was like, holy shit! Like, I don't know how you did it. This was a magic trick. You did a great job with this movie. And yes, Push is coming out soon. It's going to be on Shudder. Highly recommend it. These guys are like 3 for 3. Like, not even joking.
Yeah,
like, this is
it's crazy how good they are. Yeah. I'm so jealous of their genius.
Yeah, so I beat you this time, Patrick.
You beat me. Yes, that is better than Antlers. I agree.
Yeah. Patrick, next category. Can we survive this horror film? I'm so glad you included this category for this movie because these people in this movie, there's just not a whole lot of redeeming characters in this movie. So Death of a Unicorn, are you making it out alive?
In this instance, I'm putting myself as just Patrick Guerra in the movie. I don't relate to any of these characters specifically, and I certainly wouldn't sell my kids out the way that Elliot does. It's atrocious. So I'm just saying I'm also there for some reason. I think I am surviving, but I'll say this. If you think I'm not taking at least a little bit of that unicorn dust, you better believe I'm taking just a little bit, because I'm like, oh shit, I'm just gonna rub some in my gums real quick and then be like, run children, run. like give the unicorn back their shit now that I've gotten a little taste of that juice.
Yeah, vominos, children, vominos. I'm gonna say no, I don't make it, and here's why. I grew up, we've documented this very well in the show, we both grew up dirt poor. I know me well enough to know that I'm materialistic to know if I had a chance to make $1 billion, I'm going to jump at that chance. So I go from like broke ass, grew up poor Damon to becoming Shepherd in about 2 seconds flat. Where I'm like, let's harvest this fucker's organs. Let's make some money. Because I didn't grow up with anything, but here's my chance to become a billionaire. So I'm going to take it, and then I get donkey kicked across the yard. So I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie about my character here. I know, like, if I had a chance to make $1 billion, I'm going to probably take it. And I'm going to harvest that horn. I'm going to harvest those organs. I'm going to snort some dust. And I'm going to try to get this thing to the market to make some money off of it. So, no, I get donkey kicked across the courtyard, and I'm dead. So I don't make it out of here alive.
Fair enough.
At least I can be honest about that. Patrick, next category, remake, sequel, or leave it alone. Pretty self-explanatory, but this is where we take whatever movie we're reviewing and we say, should you remake it, should you sequelize it, or should you leave it alone? So when it comes to Death of a Unicorn, remake, and I feel like I know exactly where you're going here, remake, sequel, or leave it alone?
Well, Damon, I'm going with remake, and I'm going to give Alex Schaffman the benefit of the doubt here because he had some interesting ideas. We're going to go back to the script. We're going to redraft it. You're going to keep Jenna Ortega. You're going to keep Paul Rudd. You're going to keep everybody. But what you're going to do this time, this is the big one. We are going to rewrite the script. There'll be a different story. But we've covered that. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to show less of these goddamn unicorns. They show way too much unicorn in this movie, and you're like, well, what's the problem with that? They're CG unicorns. There are times when they use like practical pieces, like you can tell they're using like a practical snout or a practical horn or something like that. They should have stuck to that. They should have kept the unicorns in the shadows. They should have showed them less. The more you saw of them, the faker they looked. And this is a lower budget movie, so it's not like they had the greatest budget CG budget. And I'm sure, like honestly, it was probably it, pretty decent execution, but maybe for like a kids' TV show, decent execution. Not for a feature film, not even for Game of Thrones, not even for House of the Dragon. Like it just didn't have the fit and finish. And I just would have been like, I know we spent a lot of money on that CG, but we can't use it. We are going to have to obscure them, like show them in reflections in the mirrors or in the windows or whatever, but don't boldly show them the way they did it. They didn't look right.
Yeah, so and my answer is also remake, and I'm not going to rehash what I said before, but it's really just going to be changing the characters, and really it comes down to Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega's characters. One,
Yeah, focus
sorry,
on them.
Jenna Ortega, you're great at what you do, but you don't get in this movie if I'm remaking it. We're going to hire like an actual 15-year-old actor to play the role of like the daughter who actually looks. I understand you can try to make Jenna Ortega look younger. I get all that, but like let's go with an actual like 15-year-old, 16-year-old character and make it to where the dad and the daughter have to be around each other because again, we still don't fully understand why they're even in this movie together. And then actually give Paul Rudd's character redeeming qualities because as I said, 98% of the movie is still a dick and he never really redeems himself. Even when he saves his daughter and sacrifices himself at the end of the movie, it's not really altruistic. He just kind of does it and he's like, hey, we're family again. And she's like, I love you, Dad. You're like, why do you love him? He's still a dick. So yeah, it's going back to everything I said. The problems of this movie, it's fixing those problems and then, making it the where the actual lead characters are they're the lead characters, but also you actually give them a story arc because neither of them really had that in this movie.
Yeah, they desperately needed it.
Patrick, last category, is it scary? And I'm going to flip this a little bit. I'm going to say, is it scary or is it funny? So I'll kind of give you a double take here.
Okay.
Death of a Unicorn, is it scary or is it at least funny?
It's a little of neither. I mean, it has funny moments and it has bloody moments. That much is true. But is it as a full experience? It's neither funny nor scary. It was never going to scare our audience anyway. It was, and I didn't go into this going, man, maybe it'll freak the shit out of me. I knew it was never going to be that. But I was like, is it going to have an impending sense of dread? Is it going to have some sort of like harrowing, like even an emotional weight to it that like allowed me to kind of be gripped by it? And it didn't have those things. I think this was a movie that needed another rewrite for sure. So yeah, the answer kind of across the board, Damon, is no.
I'm going to agree. No. I mean, again, there was some good gore, legitimately good gore. It took way too fucking long to get there. And in the comedy, like I said, there were moments of comedy. Will Poulter's character definitely had the moments. But for an hour and 48-minute long movie, which should not have been an hour and 48 minutes long, there were like 6 good jokes, maybe 7.
Yeah.
And when you're in a comedy, and this is, I think, leaning more into comedy than horror, it's definitely, it's comedy horror, not horror comedy. Yeah. You need more than 7 jokes. I'm sorry, you do. You got to make me laugh more than you did in this movie. You got to do Shaun of the Dead. You got to do Zombieland. You got to make me laugh. And this movie had like 7 funny-ish moments, and that was kind of it. So, no, it just didn't land. And I know our buddy Chuck had done a review on this, and he kind of said, like, this is one of his most anticipated movies. He's like, I was just really disappointed. That's kind of me. I'm not saying, I wouldn't say this is one of my most anticipated, but when you got Paul Rudd, who's great, Jenna Ortega, who's very beloved, you got Will Poulter, who I adore. You mentioned Richard E. Grant, who's incredible in everything he's in. Anthony Carrigan, as I already said, in my MVP. Yeah. And it's A24. And, I've come around on A24. I am actually a fan of A24 now. You think all the elements are there. But sometimes you can put all that into a pot and the stew still tastes like shit. And that's kind of what happened. Yeah. I'm not saying it tastes like shit, but like it was not a satisfying meal. It was like whenever you're over, it's like, yeah, that was food. Like,
I guess we ate. Yeah. And that's kind of how I think about the movie. I go, I've seen worse movies. You know,
Oh yeah.
this is not a terrible movie. And like I said, I'd actually prefer to see this in a theater. I know I just told you like I'm not really a big fan of this movie, but I'd rather see it in a theater. If you have A List or some subscription service to a movie theater, go and see it there. But I don't think you're gonna. I don't think it's gonna have any impact at home personally.
Yeah, this isn't Halloween Ends where you have to glue my eyelids open to make me watch that again. This is not that. So be clear about that. Patrick, that is our episode for this week. Obviously, want to say a big thank you to everyone that tunes in the show. Make sure you check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms: Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Over on our YouTube channel, just search Rewind of the Living Dead. If you do have YouTube, even if you don't watch us over there, it'd be a huge help to us if you could subscribe to us over there. It just helps with our algorithm, search results, things like that. So just search Rewind of the Living Dead on YouTube. You will find our YouTube channel. You can also find the podcast, video, and audio versions, as well as reviews, articles, trailers, all kinds of good stuff over on our website, rewindofthelivingdead.com. So make sure and check that out as well. You got questions, comments, movies you'd like us to review, hit us up anytime on email, rotlivingdead@gmail.com. That's rotlivingdead@gmail.com. Or you can find us on social media. Just search Rewind of the Living Dead. You will find us on Twitter/X. We are on Facebook, and of course, we are also on Instagram. You can send us messages there. We'd love to hear from you guys, and we will definitely always do our best to get back to you there. And we also have our own personal social media handles. I am at Damon Martin, and you are?
At Director Patrick.
And a big thank you, as always, for me hitting the wrong button when I did the soundtracks. That's what this movie's done for me. That is our episode for this week, folks. We'll be back next week with another edition of Rewind of the Living Dead. Thanks so much for tuning in. We will see you then.
Peace.